Hello and welcome to Securing Your Microsoft 365 Data. Discover the power of Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 version 7. Today's webinar is sponsored by Veeam and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you asked. A Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know there in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now next, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources, and I'd especially like to call your attention to 3 items there from Veeam. There's a hands-on lab link. There's a report detailing 7 critical reasons for Microsoft 365 Backup, and there's a Microsoft 365 Backup for Dummies book. So I encourage you to access all those great resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can also be found in your handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenter. So to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. After the event is over, we'll look at all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. So with all that said, let's get to today's fantastic content. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter today. We have Corinne Bassett, Global Technologist for Product Strategy at Veeam. Corinne, welcome back to the Actual Tech Media webinar platform. Always good to see you.
Thanks, Scott. It's always a pleasure to be here. Now, I want to go ahead and dive directly into our content, our topic today, which is the protection of Microsoft 365 data and making sure that you have factors like immutability and monitoring in place, which we do offer within our product. So along these, we also offer a suite of different products from your physical, virtual, cloud, and containerized infrastructures. We're in the Salesforce space, the Kubernetes space. If you do have questions about that, we can definitely get you more information. Now let's dive into the whys behind Microsoft 365 protection. And we want to protect Microsoft 365 because most organizations have this, so it's a big hitting point for most cyber attackers out there. 80% of cyber attacks attack Office applications. We also have statistics around the type of business deprecation or any types of problems that can happen within businesses when they have experienced attacks. And the key to mitigating the damage caused by these attacks is having your business back up and running as soon as possible. And this means having separations in your privileges within your infrastructure, having a quick and speedy recovery option in case you're not able to get it back from the native infrastructure, and making sure you have a plan of action. It is easy to use because if you're not able to figure out your restore, then you're not going to be able to figure out how to get your data back. Now, our platform integrations, we work very closely with Microsoft, and Microsoft initiated a backup vendor certification program. Veeam was the first to announce that we are officially backup certified. This was earlier this year. We also integrate with the Teams Export API. The Teams Export API allows us to not just back up from all of the back-end areas that consist of Teams, but They allow us to get the metadata that helps stitch those different pieces together so that you're able to restore data back to the original location, not do recreations of that data in the best ever formats. Last here, we are fully modern authentication enabled, allowing authentication with enterprise applications and APIs.
Immutability is centric to being able to protect yourself from any type of attacks out there as a first line defense to your backups. Now, this gives you peace of mind in many ways, and you have to understand that there's also a difference between indelible backups and immutable backups. And these are often misused terms out there in the industry. An indelible backup is more like you have a penned in notion on a piece of paper, but if you throw water onto that paper or if you crumple up that paper, that data may not be usable. The difference between that and a immutable backup itself is the native qualities that come within object storage with object lock. And it's important to make sure that you're not just getting backups that have an indelible but immutable defense built in. This also can help with a data separation. If you have the ability to have immutable backups with a different privilege level altogether, maybe even a separate storage account in your organization, maybe sending it off to a third party certified provider, this will allow you a data separation that also locks that, being able to recover even when you've been hit by, say, a ransomware attack in your organization. Now, we offer this with an any-to-any object storage backup copy, meaning you can go from an Amazon to an AWS or vice versa. You can even do this all within house as long as it's an S3 compatible repository. And then you can lock with a mutable object lock on that secondary repository. They do have the ability to have independent retention, as well as individual credentials, even though they're being configured from the same server. Another feature we've introduced is enhancements to our self-service portal with the addition of being able to restore OneDrive and SharePoint folders, as well as being able to restore Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, Exchange, and every application we can do from that main console. If you work with any of our service providers, you can also access and restore all of that data through a self-service restore portal on their side. This leaves us with over 50 different ways to be able to restore and manage data in your infrastructure. And I want to go ahead and start to take a look at that and jump directly into a demo, and we can take a look at restoring and recovering that data. And let me know when you're able to see the screen here.
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect. So if you're familiar with any of the Veeam products, you're going to be very familiar walking into the Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 suite. Here we have the main console. You can have all of your jobs, as well as your backup infrastructure components managed from a single location. From a local repository to any of the object storage. This one's an on-premises object storage that's sending off to a locked object storage out in the cloud. This gives us a double layer of protection and a separation of privileges for our backups. Now, creating a scope is also very simple here, and you can create catch-all scopes with the entire organization and narrowing down the types of objects you would like to back up to individual repositories. I've also added individual users, other objects, and you can create a tiered system. Within this tiered system, you could have the C-suite running down to every 15 minutes. And then the entire organization or group data entities, you may only want to run those about once a day. You have the flexibility to create multiple jobs to define the SLA that's appropriate for those objects. Creating a backup copy is off of the original policy, but you do have the option to immediately copy data as soon as it is available. Now, this immediate copy can also be once a day, periodically, within certain time frames. And then you can narrow down whether or not you want to allow or disallow data copying if you have an on-premises version of those repositories. Next, we will shift to the self-service portal, but before we get there, let's take a look at the operator roles here. Whenever you initiate the self-service portal, you will gain self-service access to your own data that you've been assigned within that backup. This is based off the object IDs that match with the Microsoft 365 environment and uses that same native login to understand who you are and what you have access to. But you have the ability to assign additional roles, which are called our restore operators. These allow you to orchestrate data for a user back to their original location. There's no exfiltration of this data, meaning you can't restore it to a new mailbox or a different site. That way you don't have cross-pollination of data that shouldn't be there. Now here you can do the entire organization, or we have the same managing scopes if you want to narrow down based off of groups or individual users as to what this user can help restore. There's also an exclusion list if you have a catch-all, but maybe want to exclude something like the C-suite. Now let's take a look at the portal itself. We have the Restore Sessions tab, which will allow us to see anything that we've already initiated. But since we haven't initiated any type of data restore, we won't see anything there yet. To make this a little bit more interesting, we're going to go ahead and delete data within our console here. And it has to be a message that you've created. And we'll come up here to something that we already have backed up within our teams, which we have everything from dummy accounts to at-risk admins. And I'll delete this last message that I sent in here. And we'll catch our dummies account. Then you'll need to select a point in time. Since I know this has been generated since the day before, we'll go ahead and do the most recent backup point here. Now this will authenticate that I'm this user with this restore operator role, and the server will come back with the data that I have access to. Now we can see within files, posts, and even your other tabs, you can restore those symbolic links to those other locations. But we'll take a look at these posts. And we'll start here with an either download, or we can add it over to a restore list. If you have a long list of ticket items across applications, you could restore all of them within a fell swoop. Let's go ahead and restore this. And we'll restore it back to that original location, and it should just take a couple moments. This will always try to get the data from the primary repository, so you'll have the fastest restore options, and we're able to quickly locate that data within the metadata that we see here. Once the restore is complete, we should be able to come back over here and have a tab that has that post within it. And if you need that data, you're able to see all of that data here. We can do other applications from the Explorer window and individual users, such as, in this case, my BaaS. But as you can notice, when we start to come through and read the individual emails, we can only see the to, from, and the subject lines. We can't open up this mail, so I can't see the item my BaaS needs me to restore. And even when we're restoring to a new location, that's only a folder within that email box. So without a high level of exfiltration of data, I'm able to restore this information back to him. Now, let's take a look at monitoring and reporting. I would say monitoring and reporting is probably the most overlooked line of defense and security, and our flagship product for the monitoring side is Veeam ONE. Now, Veeam ONE has been used in many organizations, and we've even run into instances where it's caught ransomware attacks with our ransomware detection tools before an organization, IPS, IDS, was able to catch that attack. And if it had been monitored and kept up with, they would have been able to mitigate that attack much further. Another thing that Veeam ONE can be used for is we have an entire suite of APIs that can be hooked into any type of monitoring console, any type of third-party monitoring console that you desire, including something like Grafana. This is using our audit API, which allows you to know if someone's initiated a restore process on someone in your organization. Say you have a restore desk and you had someone accessing the C-level email on your help desk, but you can't find a ticket that's traced back to that individual user. You could use this to monitor when that happens, make sure there's a ticket in place. Otherwise, that might be a deeper conversation. Next is a little bit deeper into the concept of monitoring. We don't just monitor the Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 side, but we can monitor your virtualization infrastructure, your NAS backups, and most of our product suite that we have available today. This allows you to do it from one place. And inside our demo, I'll show you I have multiple Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 servers and how I can check to make sure that they're meeting their RPO, RTO, and some of the alarms that's gone off in my lab. This is the first version of our integration with our monitoring software, and we have over 10 different alarms, a dashboard that is already pre-configured but also customizable, and the ability to run on-demand reports, as well as still using those endpoint RESTful APIs. The best part? Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 version 7 and Veeam ONE version 12 is completely included within the standard license package for the Microsoft 365 backup product. So we don't charge you extra to be able to monitor your backup environment for 365. A little bit about the architecture as a whole. We can do multiple organizations from the same console, as well as anything that's an online enabled hybrid environment, on-premises environment, and pull them into the same restore wizards. This allows you to send data to primary and secondary storage types, and on that secondary storage, have immutability. But on top of all of that, we're able to monitor to make sure everything's being protected in the right way. If you're interested in having a little bit more of a hands-off approach to your environment, we offer our Veeam Service Provider Console integration now, which gives you direct access to your backups and managing your jobs without needing to control any of the infrastructure layer. This is a backup as a service type of relationship. Now we'll go ahead and take a look at Veeam ONE here, and give me just a moment to switch over the screen for us. All right, and let me know when it comes through on your side.
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. Veeam ONE has two different ways to be able to absorb this data. The first of which is a console that you're able to directly connect into, and the other is going to be an HTML version, which you can access anywhere that has access to that server. So if you place Veeam ONE inside of a DMZ, you can even work to be able to access this data remotely if needed. Now inside of here, I have two separate servers for the 365 added in, but I can take a look at a summary as a whole or pie down into each of these individual sections. Now, more interestingly, I have some alarms happening over here on the 365 lab we were just in. And it looks like this was from a while ago, and this is when I ran out of space. Now, it doesn't just tell you that there's been a problem. It tells you the amount of free space that was left, a place and how to correct these types of issues, and you can add in custom notifications. And we'll take a look at how to do that here in just a moment. Now, inside of the individual repositories, we can see beyond just the individual data types, but the type of data that is in there for SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, and groups. Now let's take a look at the alarms and how we can customize those here. So here under the Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365, you can either view all of the alarms associated for this product, or if you want to do something with the server, the proxy, or the repository, we can narrow this list down to make it a little easier to take in. In this case, we'll be taking a look at the free repository space, since that's the one that we saw go off. Here we can even set up rules, and whether or not it is above or below in conditional access, you can have this alarm go off, or say you have a server that is hundreds of terabytes large. Hundreds of terabytes, you may want to expand the default notification for how much space is left on that server, because you still have several terabytes of data space left even when you've reached that threshold. Here inside of the notifications, you can choose how you would like that to be sent out and whether or not you would want to just run a script. This script can be anything from PowerShell to Commandlet to anything that you can code in here and additionally execute out. You can add in whether or not it's an informational, a warning, or an error. This would be a great place to send if you have a ticketing system. And a knowledge base. Now, we talked about earlier whether or not this is going to go off based off of a certain threshold, and then you have a resolution option. There might be a custom tag that you say, hey, contact Jim over in Seattle. He's got the information to update the servers, increase the storage, or create the custom purchase order to make sure you don't run out of space. You can type that all in here and then scope the individual servers and locations to give a different custom message. Now, this can all be viewed from the console as well, and we'll take a look at that here. This is what I like to refer to as our coffee window, because this is what I'll often come into my lab in the morning, take a look at, and if it's anything red, like I have the repository over here where I have 3 unhealthy repositories, I might prioritize that at the beginning of my day versus something else that seemed critical at that time. The individual reports, if you have anyone in your organization requiring a compliance check for SLA, a job run history, or many of the other things that you may be audited for a compliance check, you can have a report sent directly from this console. And see anything that's been scheduled if you already have daily or weekly reports sent out. And that takes us to the end of our presentation here. Scott, do we have any burning questions in the chat for us?
We do. Let's see. The first question here, wondering, does Veeam offer license discounts around education and nonprofit?
Yes, we do. And you can work with any sales representative. They'll be able to get you the right deal for your organization.
Okay. All right, great. Cameron has a question. You showed restoring backups. He's wondering what happens if one of your backups was already compromised.
So the thing about immutability is it's going to be the exact same on different layers that those backups were originally created. So if you roll back and you know your last good point was 2 days ago or whenever that might be, then you can restore from that point in time and ensure that the data that you're getting back to your infrastructure is clean.
Okay. All right, great. Next question from M is wondering, how do you protect external team members added to our created Microsoft Teams teams?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, and if you want to look at it, it's question number 38 there in the list. But how do you protect external team members added to our Microsoft Teams?
So that's going to be a more complicated question in the fact that it depends on how they've been added. If you're
Okay.
in a business to business relationship with another organization where they're following their own rules within your organization, then you do not own the data for anything that they've created as separate objects. Now, if you have something that is a team within your organization and you've added external participants, then the data would be protected because you own the data for any external participant generating in your side. So it's really going to depend on how you've added in those external participants.
Okay. All right, great. Our next question it comes from Ahmad, and he's phrased this like a teaser for a Marvel movie. I love it. Backup Resilience Showdown. Pit Veeam's instant VM recovery against Microsoft 365's data resurrection tools. Who reigns supreme in the battle for seamless restoration after a cyber storm?
So I have to be a little bit biased because I am the SME for 365 on my side. So obviously we just have to be better. But if we're going a little bit deeper, we're talking about two different kinds of tools. The instant recovery feature is a little bit of black magic that we do the NFS restore directly from the storage and have your machine up and running in 15 minutes for the instant recovery. But if you're talking about your Microsoft 365 data protection, we're talking about software as a service data that can be wiped out with the compromise of one administrator account. Basically, they've got the gauntlet and they can wipe you out. So we're able to separate that so we're in a different universe and you can still get that data back.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay. Another question here. Can you deploy the backup product in the cloud?
Absolutely. So Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 can be deployed anywhere you can deploy a Windows machine, but more directly, we can be deployed from the AWS Marketplace, the Azure Marketplace, and as an extension on the IBM Storage Marketplace. So whether or not you want to create it from scratch or completely there, we're able to do that from the cloud side.
Okay. All right. Jonathan is wondering what differentiates Veeam's Office 365 backup application from other solutions in terms of data protection, ease of use, and scalability for medium and large-sized businesses.
So I would say a lot of our competition falters in the breadth of service for your restoration options. And even when we're compared and pitted up against software as a service backup vendors that are different from Veeam, not our service providers, they lack the ability to get your data back in a timely managed option. We have integrations directly with Microsoft to make sure that's not a problem. And I sit with our competitive intelligence team bi-weekly to make sure we're still hitting those types of marks and having that flexibility and ease of use.
Okay. Excellent. So let's see. Ned is wondering, what are Veeam's flexible storage options pertaining to your backup as a service to protect Microsoft 365 data?
We offer everything from working with an on-premises SAN to having the ability to work with a SMB type of storage. But it's recommended for this kind of data across the market to leverage what's called object storage. So whether you're running with an S3 compatible from like AWS or an agnostic storage vendor that's using the API, or the blob storage, this has the ability to expand as user adoption happens without really the heartache that happens with adding extra drives and hoping that it expands properly and reaching limitations on NFS and REFS file limitations. Object storage, I'd say, really is the future with the object lock.
Okay. All right. Great. Richard is wondering, does the free version of Teams get the same level of backup and recovery as the paid version?
So we have a free version, which is only limited by the number of users, which is 10. But you still have all of the restore options that you have within the core product. You have all of the same features you have within the core product. There is at this time no limitations except for the number of users and SharePoint sites you can back up from our core product.
Okay. All right. Warren's got kind of a general question about the overarching Microsoft 365 technology. He's wondering, why is Microsoft 365 more of a target for attacks?
I would say just the availability. Way back when we first were talking about different exploits coming up, a majority of exploits out there in the industry were Windows. And they were Windows because Windows had a tremendous adoption in the business and the workplaces that have the money to be able to attack. And we've started to see more and more Mac and iOS attacks come around lately because of the adoption in the industry. But attacks are going to exploit 100% time the most used products.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Let's see. There's a question here from Tatiana who's wondering if there's a separate setting in Veeam for configuring email items with legal hold.
So we have different options in the general options to include or exclude those types of backed up items. So you have a global setting, and then you can choose whether or not to back up the archive mailbox or not within our backup. So you do have the flexibility to choose.
Okay. All right. Great. Oh, you know what? And Richard, I think your answer was really interesting, but Richard clarified he was talking about a free version of Teams, not the free version of Veeam. So I don't know if that changes anything, but.
Backing up free teams, I think.
Yeah, backing up free teams, right.
Free teams should be able to be backed up as long as you have access to create the enterprise applications, which even if you have free teams, you should still have access to that enterprise application in your Entra ID section.
Okay. All right. Jose is asking, can you provide a little more detail on how to set up Veeam ONE? Mentioning only seeing trial option on Veeam website. I'm not sure if that's something for now or more of a follow-up, but
so it's actually kind of funny. All of our access to our software say, hey, use a trial. But the funny thing is our trial and our free version are all the same product, and it's within the license that unlocks those deeper features within those products. So if you download Veeam ONE with the trial, it'll automatically give you a trial license, but you can use your 365 backup license and migrate that over to be able to back up or monitor the backup 365.
Okay. All right. Super. And maybe time for one more here. I wonder, do we have to manage the backup product in-house?
So there's a couple options with that. We have an entire suite of registered service providers. These service providers can handle the entire backup process as a backup as a service, taking the load off your IT department. And we have providers that just provide the object storage. So you could manage it in-house if you choose, and then send it off to an object storage so you don't have to worry about that on-premises footprint when the adoption of 365 takes off.
Okay. All right, great. Well, Corinne, we've had you here in the hot seat for quite a while. Really appreciate you tackling all these questions. It's probably a good place to leave it. So, just the last one, if somebody wants to get started with Veeam or find out more, any sort of final recommendations there?
Absolutely. As mentioned earlier, you have that trial available on our website, which will give you 30 days unfettered access to as many users that you want to back up. Or you can work if you're a smaller organization and all you need is 10 users and you want to try it out for 10 users. Our free edition will go forever and always without restrictions.
All right. Tremendous. Well, Corinne, thanks for a really good presentation and all your insights here in the Q&A. Always great to have you on. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, and before we wrap up, we have one more piece of business. That's the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card today is John Snodgrass from Pennsylvania. So congratulations to John. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Veeam for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for all of your great questions. That concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day.